Welcome, everyone. The presentation we're going to give you this evening is going to be one that I really pray will help you to have a very healthy brain. Because if you don't know how to have one, you won't get one. It's a tissue that needs a lot of work, needs a lot of attention. The Lord Jesus Christ did not die on the cross to save your tonsils. He did not die to save your lungs or your liver or your gallbladder. He died to save your mind. Your mind. Remember what it says in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 1 and 2? It says, I beseech ye therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So you see, the mind is a very, very important part of salvation. It's a very important part of understanding anything. And most people today, you'll find they don't understand. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to interpret. They don't know how to think. They have so many stresses happening, it's almost impossible to try and find a solution. Well, tonight, I think you're going to see a solution. It is so important. So as we look at this tonight, I make sure my clicker is working right. I think I'm going to transfer this over to here sometime. Concerned about your memory? Don't forget to watch this. Right? I was going to say, what was the topic we were having tonight? That would have been a good one, right? Good opening line. But no. Here's some interesting statistics about the human brain. It weighs only about 3 pounds. Now there's 2.2 pounds of gold. The brain is worth more than the gold, definitely. Also, you may find it interesting that of all the air that you breathe, your brain uses 20% of the oxygen that you breathe in. Yet it's such a small tissue by comparison. Also, all those foods you eat, all the nutrients that you have coming into your system, your brain uses approximately 20% of the calories we consume. Now, wait a minute. That is such a small tissue. How come it burns so much of the energy we use? It is the most incredible tissue ever created. Ever created. Absolutely incredible. In fact, I look at these students here studying the brain. The brain is the bedrock of the personality and yet is 80% water. Your personality, your character, all that you do, 80% water. Isn't that amazing? You just think about that. And to think about it, you got to have a part of your body that's 80% water. Water is doing your thinking for you. Hard to think about, but I tell you, it's true. It's all part of that composition of the brain. Also, in the brain, it contains 100 billion neurons, about the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. In the brain, the neurons, and that's as many as they're able to count. There may be even a little more. Maybe a little more. Now, there is some supporting tissues or supporting network for the neurons, and they are called glia. It has trillions of supportive cells called glia. They are not as fast operating as are the neurons, and scientists actually cannot find out or understand all the workings of the glia, exactly what they do. But I tell you this, without them, you won't function, or your body will find it extremely hard to function. Let's put it that way. And of all those trillions of cells that we have within the brain, has as many as 40,000 connections per neuron. Remember, more neurons than the stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and there's 40,000 connections per neuron. That is more connections than there are stars in the known universe. They talk to each other and can perform as many as 200 calculations per second. Now, I don't know about you, but that really I say, what do we have here as far as tissue goes? What is this that is inside that skull? We have actually very little appreciation for the truth of what's happening inside our systems. Now, the brain's capabilities, if we just think about this, The capacity of the long-term memory is virtually unlimited. There's people that have forgotten things, but your long-term memory is virtually unlimited. Once recorded, information in the brain is supposed to be retained permanently. Supposed to. You see, because all the neuron connections are made, all the wiring is all done, and the information should remain there. Why doesn't it? Why doesn't that remain? Why then do so many of us have problems with cognitive processes such as memory, attention, problem solving, etc.? Why is it that what stops this incredible 3 pounds of tissue from working like it's designed to work? You're about to learn. And maybe you'll discover some of these things that you're doing or not doing, and you'll see why your brain may be not performing as good as it should be. I'm going to ask you for a letter here. I'm going to give you a letter R. Now, would anybody else like, this is one of the symptoms, one of the things that causes the brain not to function properly. Can anybody else give me a letter?
L.
Nope. Somebody should have a buzzer. You know, that's not it, right? No, try an S. Now can you figure out what the word is?
Rest.
That's pretty good. Want to buy a vowel? You got it. It's stress. Wow, stress. That is one key factor to the human body not responding, or the human brain not responding like it should be. Chronic or lasting stress releases certain hormones that have been found to kill cells in the hippocampus, one of the major memory centers located in the temporal lobes. Stress from having too much to do, day in and day out, or from having unresolved emotional trauma clearly hurts brain function. That's from Making a Good Brain Great by Dr. Daniel A. Mann. Now this is interesting because if I studied the work of Dr. Robert Sapolsky, he studied over 30 years on baboons in Africa, on the savannah. And he discovered that when he thought about something like when a zebra is going to be attacked by a lion, it has about 3 minutes of stress. The hormones are running wild. But in 3 minutes, it's over. Either the zebra escapes or the lion has a meal. But either way, it's over. Do you realize that as human beings, we literally bathe our bodies in stress hormones throughout the day? Unlike the zebra, whom after it's chased and all of a sudden the stress hormone levels drop right down, we don't. You're driving to work. You're looking at everything that's going on. You're listening to the radio. Somebody cuts you off. You're stressed. You get to work. You got paperwork to go. You got deadlines to perform. All of these things are stresses on your brain. And how many people get enough nutrition to support such stress loads? And if we just stop and think about it, what are we doing to the mind that is supposed to be renewed in the image of Christ? What are we doing to this brain? Insufficient rest. Can anybody identify? Insufficient rest. Sleep deprivation, less than 7 hours of sleep per night, lowers activity in the temporal lobes, affecting learning and memory. So the brain is affected. And it's not going to perform properly when you go to study. But also, consistent lack of rest produces not only a tired brain, but a retired brain. I don't want my brain retired. I want it working very, very well. And what I put there was a little play on words, but it's actually true. The brain becomes, after it's tired, it becomes retired. You're adding more and more stress loads on it. And you have to ask yourself, are you getting enough rest per night to allow your brain to function properly? Is it happening? Here is the effect of melatonin and vitamin E on diabetes-induced learning and memory impairment in rats. You know, I always ask myself, why do they use rats? Why rats all the time? Rats have a very similar human characteristic, if you will, when it comes to anatomy in the brain area. And things affect it very, very, it's a real parallel, let's just put it that way. So I'm going to make it a lot more simple than what is written there. Melatonin, which is produced by the pineal gland of the brain during dark hours, is one of the strongest antioxidants. Research has shown that this hormone, among its numerous other benefits, also significantly benefits your memory. Researchers took diabetes-induced rats, which had inhibited memory and learning due to the diabetes, and dosed them with melatonin and vitamin E. They found that both antioxidants significantly improved learning performance and memory while reversing lipid peroxidation, that is, rancid fats in the brain, found in the brain. Isn't that interesting? Melatonin produced in the brain. What's it going to do? Everything the brain makes is made for the brain to work perfectly. So now, let's look at another inhibitor of the brain's functioning. Caffeine. Caffeine. And it's not only in coffee, it's in other things. Caffeine constricts blood flow to the brain and many other organs. It blocks receptors for the brain chemical adenosine, the chemical which triggers the brain to slow down so that we will go to sleep and allow the brain a chance to rejuvenate function. The caffeine, instead, is a stimulant and causes the release of adrenaline, keeping us active. However, once the effects wear off, you feel fatigued and depressed, and you need to take more caffeine to pick you back up. This starts the downhill spiral, causing you to feel jumpy, irritable, and interfering with quality of sleep. If you try to stop taking caffeine, you get very tired and depressed, and this is often accompanied with a splitting headache. Besides coffee and tea and soda pop, caffeine is also found in high amounts in weight loss supplements, including herbal supplements. So many Christians want to take a cup of coffee and sit down and study the Bible. What you're actually doing is preventing your learning with a cup of coffee. Your frontal lobes cannot consume anything worthwhile from the scriptures because of the coffee. Vaccinations, there's another one. Hinders, it's going to sting. People who have had 5 consecutive flu shots increase their risk of Alzheimer's disease tenfold to those who had only 2 or less. Mercury found in vaccinations. And those aren't my words. That's Dr. Hugh Fundenberg, one of the world's leading immunogeneticists. This is, don't you think we need to learn about these things? What's the devil trying to do with our minds? Is he trying to make them so they cannot discern truth? Or is he trying to make them super intelligent? You tell me. And he's going to use our appetites to dull the brain. Totally dull the brain. I'll tell you, we were so really pleased to find a fresh juice place just up the road from here, about 10 minutes. And Jeanie and I go up and get a quart of that juice. Just, oh boy, beet, apple, and carrot, and just have it every day. Every day. And eat it. Is it delicious? Oh, I tell you, it's to live for. Just, wow. It's really just incredible. And we feel the difference in the body. And the brain says, that's exactly what I want. Feed me more. Feed me more. Now, Jeanie's going to come and share with you some things on excitotoxins.
I want to share with you now information about excitotoxins. For those of you that may not be familiar with excitotoxins, I think you will find this very interesting. You will see how this is another area that is going to significantly affect how our brains function. And the information I'm going to share comes from 3 doctors, 3 key doctors, Dr. Russell Blaylock, Dr. George Schwartz, and Dr. John Olney. And Dr. Russell Blaylock is the doctor who has made this information more available over the last number of years. He's published a book titled Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills, and I am highly recommending that book to you. He's written it in a way that is very, very readable and understandable, brings out a lot of information that is very important, I think, for everyone to understand. So I really recommend his book. And the information that he has made available is quite astounding. So let's take a look. What if someone were to tell you that a chemical added to food could cause brain damage in your children, and that this chemical could affect how your children's nervous systems are formed during development, so that in later years they may have learning or emotional difficulties? When I found this out, I was horrified to think that chemicals in food could cause this to happen to our children. This to me was very, very upsetting. What if there was scientific evidence that these chemicals could permanently damage a critical part of the brain known to control hormones, so that later in life your child might have endocrine problems? How would you feel? That would be extremely upsetting. Suppose evidence was presented to you strongly suggesting that the artificial sweetener in your diet soft drink may cause brain tumors to develop. What if you could be shown overwhelming evidence that one of the main ingredients in the sweetener could cause the same brain lesions as MSG? And by the way, brain lesions are on the rise. I don't know if you're aware of it. We have a lot of patients that come to us with brain lesions, brain tumors, and the incidence of it is definitely on the increase. And I really believe that this could be part of the problem that we're seeing. And finally, what if it could be demonstrated that all of these types of chemicals could possibly aggravate or even precipitate many of today's epidemic neurodegenerative brain diseases, such as Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, ALS, and Alzheimer's disease? Would you be concerned if you knew that these food additives are a particular risk if you have diabetes or have ever had a stroke, brain injury, brain tumor, seizure, or have suffered from hypertension, meningitis, or viral encephalitis? Would you also be upset to learn that many of the brain lesions caused by these products can result from a single exposure of these products in sufficient concentration? How would you feel when you learn the food industry hides and disguises these additives so they can't be recognized, and all of these well-known brain toxins are poured into our food and drink by the thousands of tons? Isn't that disturbing to think about? These additives have no other purpose than to enhance the taste of food in order to boost sales. That's the only reason that they have been put into the food, is to enhance the taste so that they will be boosting their sales. So it comes back to profit. So what are excitotoxins? Let's take a look what excitotoxins are. Excitotoxins are amino acids which in excess cause neurons, that's our nerve cells, to fire repeatedly, causing cell damage or death within 1 to 3 hours. From a previous presentation, how many of you remember what amino acids are? What are amino acids? I shared that in a previous presentation.
The building blocks of the body.
Okay, the building blocks specifically of protein. Do you remember the little video clip that we watched and we saw how a protein was put together? And you saw those amino acids being all chained together, and then it went into a little machine that folded it all up, and that became the protein. Okay? So amino acids are very, very important. We need to have them. What this is saying here is that excitotoxins are those very important amino acids which in, what is that word? Excess. Excess. That's the problem. Very important amino acids in excess. And what they do is they cause our neurons to fire repeatedly, and that ends up causing damage or death to the cell in a very short period of time, 1 to 3 hours. That's where the name excitotoxin actually comes for. Anything that causes damage in your body is a toxin. And because these have an excitatory way in which they cause damage, they're called an excitotoxin. Okay, that's how that word came about. So amino acids, we talked about this in the previous lecture, are the chemical building blocks used to create proteins. Proteins are used by the body for a variety of functions. Some form part of the membrane of the cell itself. Others may be used to form enzymes, hormones, and components of various tissues. So obviously they're very important. We need to have them. There are 3 key amino acids that I just want to point out. We'll come back to these a little bit later here. But glutamate, you're probably familiar with that one. MSG, monosodium glutamate, probably most of you have heard of that one. Aspartate, you're probably familiar with that under the trade name of aspartame. Okay? And then cysteine is one that you may not have heard of, but you've probably tasted. That's what gives a meaty kind of a flavor to things. So they will use it oftentimes in meat analogs, imitation meats, okay, because that helps give that kind of meaty, savory flavor. So these are 3 excitotoxins or amino acids that are functioning as excitotoxins when used in excess or consumed in excess in the body. And we'll see that here a little bit later. Now, excitotoxins cause cell damage or death within 1 to 3 hours. And the areas of our brain that are being affected are areas of cognition, areas of thought and memory and communication. Those are the areas that are being affected by this damage or death to the neurons. To me, that's very concerning. How many of you have ever seen Muhammad Ali in interviews? How does he communicate? You've seen him communicate. How does he communicate? Is he quick and sharp? And no, he's not. Very slow, hard to communicate, difficult to communicate. He is what they call punch drunk. He's been hit in the head so many times and received so many concussions that he's now what they call punch drunk. When we take into our bodies excitotoxins that damage or completely destroy neurons, we are in essence giving ourselves a little concussion, a small concussion. Now, if you were to slip and fall and receive a concussion, I could probably talk to you within a day or 2, and I wouldn't notice, your friends wouldn't notice, your family wouldn't notice. There'd be nothing there that would be noticeable. But let me ask you this. If you were to receive a concussion every day for, say, the next 6 months, the next year, the next couple of years, do you think eventually, at some point, family and friends are going to start to see a difference? Something is taking place. There's enough damage that has occurred. In time, this is what excitotoxins are doing to our brains. They're damaging or completely destroying neurons. And to me, that's very sobering. I don't have any extra that I want to get rid of. Okay, I want to share with you here, this is going to maybe seem a little bit technical, but there's a point that I want to make here, so just bear with me. Glutamate, we talked about glutamate, that it is an amino acid, which if it comes in excess in our body, it will be excitatory in its properties, how it reacts in the body. But glutamate is an important neurotransmitter. That means it allows neurons or nerve cells to communicate with each other, okay? Glutamate is responsible for opening a calcium channel in the neuron so that calcium can move into the cell, and then this results in a number of reactions which stimulate connected neurons. In your body, in your brain, neurons do not connect physically with each other. There's a little space in between called a synapse, where one stops and the next one starts. Very small little space in there in between, but they don't physically connect with each other. It's very similar to cell phones. When you're on a cell phone and talking to someone, you're not physically connected with them, but you're connected with them. And it's that same type of an idea in your brain. There's not a physical connection there. So when that electrical impulse fires down that nerve cell, and by the way, your axons of your nerve cells are very long. They can be 3 feet long. They're very long. But the dendrites on the end, the little tree part of it, they're very, very short, about 1 millimeter. They're very, very short. But your foot all the way up to your brain interpreted that and said, this is going to damage the foot. Yank that foot back, and it fired a signal down to the muscles to contract and yank that foot back. And it happened just as fast as that, so quickly. And what's taking place is this amazing transfer between chemical and electrical signals to fire that information and cause that action to take place. To me, it is so fascinating. It just says wonders about the God who created us. Just incredible. But what takes place here now, this very important neurotransmitter, actually causes this channel to open up so that calcium can move into the cell. This is going to cause a number of things to take place. Now, one of the products of these chemical reactions results in the production of free radicals. We've talked about free radicals, how they're damaging in the body. One in particular, hydroxyl, which left unchecked, it can kill brain cells. But fortunately, the free radicals are absorbed by antioxidant vitamins such as vitamin C, vitamin E, beta-carotene. So drinking all those wonderful juices, the carrot juice and everything, you're giving your body wonderful antioxidants to help mop up and clean up these free radicals. Okay? Now, the point I want to make is this. If glutamate levels become even slightly excessive, the calcium channels in some cells get stuck open, leading to the destruction of those cells and adjacent cells. So if those channels get stuck open, we end up causing damage in our brain. Now, Dr. Russell Blaylock, he had this to say. Today, virtually, what's that word? All. How much is outside of all? Nothing. Today, virtually all of the neurodegenerative diseases are now considered to be intimately related to the excitotoxic process. Seizures, headaches, strokes, brain injury, and developmental brain disorders are all intimately related to excitotoxins. Isn't that incredible? And I think you'll be amazed, for those of you that were not aware of this information, when you go and start reading labels, probably on a number of things that you may have as common things that you use in your cupboards or refrigerator and so forth, and start looking, you'll be amazed at how prevalent they are in the foods that we consume on a regular basis. This is coming from Dr. Russell Blaylock's book, and he's saying that the FDA still refuses to recognize the immediate and long-term danger to the public caused by the practice of allowing various excitotoxins to be added to the food supply, such as MSG, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, aspartame. I'm going to give you some lists here shortly that will list these excitotoxins so that you can write them down. I'll give you a chance to write them down. But the amount of these neurotoxins added to our food has increased enormously since their first introduction. Look at this. By 1972, 262,000 metric tons. 262,000 metric tons were being added to our foods. Over 800 million pounds of aspartame have been consumed in various products since it was first approved. Isn't that something? He says the public must be made aware that these toxins, excitotoxins, are not present in just a few foods, but rather in almost all processed foods. In almost all processed foods. That's where you're going to find them, is in the processed foods. In many cases, they're being added in disguised forms, such as natural flavoring, spices, yeast extract, textured protein, soy protein extract, etc. And he says that these liquid forms of excitotoxins, such as occurs in soup and gravy and diet soft drinks, are more toxic than that added to solid foods, and that is because they're more rapidly absorbed and they reach a higher blood level. Isn't that something? And I'll put some lists up here shortly where you can see the items that he's listed. So because these particular amino acids are stimulating, they cause the brain to have an enhanced sense of taste. Wait a minute, it says the brain has an enhanced sense of taste. I thought it was my tongue that did the tasting. Did you know that your tongue doesn't taste, and your nose doesn't smell, and your eyes don't see, and your ears don't hear? Did you know that? It's true. Actually, these are just organs that communicate signals, and it is your brain that has to interpret this. It's actually your brain that tastes. It's actually your brain that sees. You can have eyes, but if it's not wired properly in your brain, you won't see. It's your brain that actually interprets the smell or the hearing. We have a friend of ours who, because of a little bit of damage that took place, though his tongue works fine and his mouth and teeth, everything works fine in there, but there's no taste. He can't taste the difference between different flavors because that little area in his brain isn't correctly working. Isn't that amazing? So manufacturers know that it's actually your brain that is interpreting or doing the tasting of these foods. And so they are going to put in things that help stimulate or make a food taste better than it would if you could actually taste what that food tasted like. So foods which our bodies would tell us maybe didn't normally, they would tell us don't really taste good, suddenly they're becoming delicious. Now there's a whole sector of foods that this is very prevalent in, and that is in diet foods. Because you think about diet foods, you know, they take out the fat and the sugar, and really what you have left probably tastes a lot like cardboard. And so then they have to put something in there to encourage someone to want to consume it. And so they'll add things in there that make it taste good. And so people will look and say, wow, you know, whole chocolate cake, I can eat the whole thing. There's only 2 calories in here, you know, and they'll feel good about eating it. But meanwhile, they're doing damage to their brain. Not only that, I do want to just share this as kind of a side note, but these excitotoxins, which are often placed in things when they're removing out the fat and the sugar to reduce the calories in there, excitotoxins actually have been shown to contribute to weight gain. So even though you may be buying, you know, 0 Coke or whatever the case may be with no calories in there, it's actually going to cause weight gain to take place in the body. Very interesting. So foods which our taste buds would normally tell us did not taste good, they suddenly become delicious. Our brain is saying, hey, that tastes good, and so we go ahead and consume it. All right. Here's a list of persons who should avoid excess-free glutamate. So if you find yourself on the list, you should avoid it. Infants and children, of course, children are always more susceptible to these things. Pregnant women, if you have hypoglycemia, people suffering from brain fog or fatigue, obese people, psychological disorders, if you have learning disabilities, problems with seizures, headaches or migraines, any immune system disorders, vitamin or mineral deficiencies, if you're a woman of childbearing age, if you have hormone or endocrine related disorders, problems with asthma or allergy, tinnitus, that's the ringing in the ears, most other chronic diseases, or if you're a health conscious person. I didn't make that list up, but I thought it was very good, because if you couldn't find yourself on one of the other ones, you should at least find yourself on the last one as a health conscious person. It includes everyone. No one should be taking into their body excess-free glutamate, because it always does damage, and depending on the dose amount, it may cause permanent damage to those brain cells. It may cause the death of them. Now, I want to give you a list here of additives that always contain MSG. These always will destroy or permanently damage brain cells. This list here. Monosodium glutamate, we know that one, monosodium glutamate. Hydrolyzed vegetable protein, actually anything at all that is hydrolyzed or autolyzed, you do not want to take. Even if you cannot remember the rest of it, if it's hydrolyzed or autolyzed, you don't want to consume it. I'm going to show you very shortly actually how hydrolyzed vegetable protein is made, okay? If it says plant protein extract, by the way, why can they say plant protein extract? Because that sounds very harmless, doesn't it? Plants are okay, we know we need protein, the extract shouldn't be harmful. Why would a plant protein, why do you think that they can get away with labeling as a plant protein extract? Anyone have any idea? We're talking about amino acids now. Do you know where amino acids are made? Plants. Plants are making amino acids. So they can say plant protein extract, of course, because it's coming from the plant. They can say hydrolyzed vegetable protein, of course, because it's coming out of the vegetable. Okay? So the plants are making these wonderful amino acids that we need. We need them in the package as God gave them to us. But when we take them out of that package, when we extract them and we concentrate them, now we start to increase the levels in our body, and there's where the damage starts to take place. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand that? So when you see these very innocent sounding ingredients on labels, you'll understand where that's coming from, why they can label it that way, okay? Sodium caseinate, calcium caseinate. Look at this one, yeast extract. Has anyone heard of the product called Marmite? Marmite? If you happen to have it in your cupboard, go home and read. The first ingredient is yeast extract. First ingredient on there. What about textured protein? Anyone here of textured vegetable protein? If you've heard of all the meat analogs, you know, Fry Chick and Big Frank's, and I forget all the names of all the meat analogs, but if you've heard of those, all of those contain textured vegetable protein. Autolyzed yeast, hydrolyzed oat flour, so anything autolyzed or hydrolyzed. So let's take a look now at how they actually make hydrolyzed vegetable protein. This is how they make it. If it's in an ingredient on a food that you're consuming, then you'll understand what it is that you're actually consuming. Let's take a look. It's also referred to as vegetable protein or plant protein, of course, because it's coming from those sources. It's made from junk vegetables. They're not going to use the good ones they can sell for, 5 times the price on the shelf. So it's made from junk vegetables which are unfit for sale and especially selected so as to have naturally high contents of glutamate. The extraction process of hydrolysis involves boiling these vegetables in a vat of acid. This is followed by a process of neutralization with caustic soda. The resulting product is a brown sludge, doesn't that just sound so yummy, that collects on the top. This is scraped off and allowed to dry. The end product is a brown powder that is high in 3 known excitotoxins, glutamate, aspartate, and cystoic acid, which converts in the body to cysteine. Those are the 3 that I showed you earlier. Cysteine gives it that very meaty flavor. So you would know hydrolyzed vegetable protein, if you see that in something, it's going to give kind of a meaty kind of a flavor to whatever that is, okay? Because it's high in those 3, not just 1 excitotoxin, 3 excitotoxins to destroy your brain cells. Isn't that something? So that's how hydrolyzed vegetable protein is made. Here's additives that frequently contain MSG. By the way, these lists come directly from Dr. Russell Blaylock's book, Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. So if you buy his book, you will have those lists right in the back in the appendix of his book. So malt extract, malt flavoring. If the ingredient just, the label just says bouillon, if that's in the ingredient label, broth, or if it says stock, if it says flavoring, look at natural flavoring. It's anywhere 20 to 60% MSG. How many things do you see with natural flavoring? It's in everything. It's in everything. It's amazing. Natural beef or chicken flavoring, could say natural vegetable flavoring as well. If it just says seasoning or just says spices, how many times do you see where it just says spices? I actually will call companies and ask them what those spices are. A lot of times they don't want to tell you, which to me is a little bit disturbing. If they don't want to tell me, then I usually don't eat it. But if they tell me, I will sometimes ask them, does it have MSG? Is there any MSG in there? And I will go through the list of items, because they will hide that in spices, under the name of spices. So if you see these on your ingredient labels, err on the side of caution and pass it by. Now here is a list of additives that may contain MSG or other excitotoxins. There's over 70 identified excitotoxins. So these can contain MSG or other excitotoxins. Carrageenan. Carrageenan, if you're buying milks like soy milk, almond milk, rice milk, most of those milks out there contain carrageenan. Look on the ingredient label. It contains carrageenan. So you're better off, make your milk at home. Make a nut milk. Put a little bit of nuts and water in the blender. Blend that up. If you want it thinner, to be thinner like milk, Add more water, less nuts. If you want it thicker like a cream, less water, more nuts. You can have any kind of nut. You may want to have macadamia nut milk or cashew nut milk or almond milk. You can have any kind of a milk you want. You can flavor it with vanilla bean if you'd like, or some raisins, some dates if you want a little bit of sweet to it, maybe a little maple syrup or honey. Make your own milk and avoid these potential health hazards that are in the milks. If it just says enzymes, I'm not talking about digestive enzymes that you would purchase, say, from a health food store, but if you're reading a food label and that food label says enzymes, that would be something to be concerned about. Or if it says soy protein concentrate or soy protein isolate. How many of you have heard of a product called Bragg's Liquid Aminos? Bragg's Liquid Aminos? Think about the title of that, Bragg's Liquid Aminos. What are aminos? Amino acids. These are liquid amino acids. We just talked about Dr. Russell Blaylock shows that liquid amino acids are going to raise your blood levels much quicker, so they're more damaging in the body, okay? What are the ingredients, for those of you that have had experience with Bragg's, what are the ingredients in Bragg's Liquid Aminos? There's only 2 ingredients. One is water. I'll give you that one. What's the other one? Soybeans. Soybeans and water. Okay, soybeans and water, that's the ingredients. Have you tasted it? Okay, what does it taste like? It's very salty, isn't it? Very, very salty. Okay, how many of you have tasted what a soybean tastes like, just on its own? It's very bland, isn't it? It doesn't taste salty at all. It's very, very bland. How can you get a very bland bean, add water, and get it to be so salty? How does that work? That's my question. You know, math should be 1 + 1 = 2, right? You can't take something very bland, add water, and make salt. You should question that. Question everything. When I teach my classes, I tell people my goal is to make all of you label readers. Don't put anything into your body. There's no one out there that is saying, I'm going to protect the consumer, the average consumer, I'm going to protect them from these terrible things. There's no one out there doing that. It's up to you. No one is going to check the labels. If you don't do it, you could be putting things into your body that are going to harm you. So don't use Bragg's Liquid Aminos. And I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this on a DVD or something publicly. But use instead organic tamari. Organic tamari. And the reason I say organic, because as we talked about in our GMO presentation, soy is genetically modified, and so you want to make sure it's organic. So organic tamari. And don't use the Bragg's because you're going to expose yourself to excitotoxic process. Whey protein concentrate, that's another one there. So these are all additives that you want to avoid consuming. Make sure that they're not on the ingredient labels of things that you're consuming. This little thing here is really very not cooperative tonight. This is a quote from Dr. John Olney. He says, the amount of MSG in a single bowl of commercially available soup is probably enough to cause blood glutamate levels to rise higher in a human child than levels that predictably cause brain damage in immature animals. Isn't that something? He's saying in one bowl of commercially available soup, there's enough glutamate in there to cause the blood level to rise higher in a child than where they're seeing brain damage happening in immature animals. Again, I encourage you to be very careful on any processed foods that you're purchasing, because it's the processed foods where the excitotoxins are contained, and that's where you're going to have the damage. This comes from Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 150. Satan is constantly on the alert to bring the race fully under his control. His strongest hold on man is through the appetite, and this he seeks to stimulate in every possible way. And I fully believe that that he is working to destroy our brains, the medium of communication between us and God. So we need to be very, very careful. Now, Rudy's going to share with you some ways that you can protect your brain.
I'm going to show you something that's going to really build your brain. Because we've seen some of the things that destroy the brain. Let's work at rebuilding it, shall we? I always find this so exciting to think about, even and to do. And that is this. We're going to start putting the brain together. Zip, make it work absolutely perfect. Look at the work here done by a professor at UC Berkeley. Her name is Dr. Marion Diamond. During decades of research with rats, they're the rats again, right? UC Berkeley integrative biology professor Marion Diamond discovered fascinating insights into how brain function can be improved. Are you interested? I sure was, and these things work. Absolutely amazing. So her research revealed that the level of enrichment in a rat's environment can alter the rat's neurological structures. In plain English, if you surround yourself with brain-enriching activities, guess what happens to your brain? It grows. It develops new neurons. It develops new cells. They thought the brain was just there kind of dormant, but it's actually very exciting to know the brain can actually be rebuilt. You know, as we focus on different things, our brain starts to develop in those specific areas. If it's music, somebody will develop a great musical lobe in the frontal lobes of the brain. But you can't have an imbalance of things. The brain was meant to be mathematical, musical, artistic, all of those things. Also, Dr. Diamond's observations consistently showed that the more playmates and toys a rat had, the larger its brain structures consequently grew. Have you surrounded yourself with brain-growing people and things? It'd be a good thing to do so, wouldn't it? And friends that will enrich your intellectual capacities. Don't talk about the neighbors or bad things about people. A rumor is the speedy transfer of near-accurate information, and it doesn't do much to enhance the brain's development. You know what? Old age is when your broad mind and your narrow waist change places. So what you need to do is start developing that brain. Don't stop learning. Keep on learning. And that way you'll be a blessing to your family and your friends. Our brain also needs exercise through mental workouts. UC Berkeley researchers advise that if you want a bigger, more active brain, take a lesson learned long ago from laboratory rats. Why do we have to study rats to find out about ourselves, right? Just amazing. And stimulate your nervous system with enriching activities and interpersonal contact. Really exciting. Now here's something from the spirit of prophecy. Backs up this statement. Well, actually the statement backs up the statement. Mental activity will produce health. And this is better than a sluggish, disorderly, untrained mind. Many become worthless as ministers after advancing in age. Had they worked the brain, they would have been fruitful in old age. And working the brain does not mean studying. That's not the only way to work the brain. Do you know the absolute best physical activity to work your brain is? What the best physical exercise is to work your brain? Ping pong. Ping pong is incredible for working both hemispheres of the brain, developing motor skills, developing mathematical skills, because you're doing all kinds of mathematical equations when you're trying to get that ball. And here's the key. From a Christian standpoint, don't try and put the ball where the other person can't hit it. Okay? That's not Christian. Have you noticed that God doesn't take advantage of our weaknesses? What does He do? He defends our weak points. He seeks to protect us. But what does the devil do? The devil seeks to get our weak points and take advantage of us. So now when you're playing ping pong with that other person, like Jeanie and I play, we try to keep the ball on the table. Now that's a whole different attitude. It's the same thing if you were doing volleyball Don't try and hit the ball where the other team's going to lose. Try and hit it to the weakest opponent so they can have a chance to hit it. Try and help the other person to have a good time. And in doing so, you're going to develop a greater brain than if you developed aggressiveness. You know, God is a God of peace and love. And when we start to develop that brain He created, it was designed to be molded after Him. Kind of interesting, isn't it? When you just think about things. So ping pong, fantastic. Also, we also need physical exercise for good brain function. Now watch this. Studies of senior citizens, it's good we got away from rats, who walk regularly showed significant improvement in memory skills compared to sedentary elderly people. Walking also improved their learning ability, concentration, and abstract reasoning. Stroke risk was cut by 57% in people who walked as little as 20 minutes a day. Do you think you can do that? I think you should all try it. You've got nothing to lose except a bad memory, right? Because it really activates the system. We also found that for every extra mile walked per week, there was a 13% less chance of cognitive decline. So you don't need to be marathon runners. The exciting thing is there was a dose relationship which showed that even a little is good, but more is better. This is research by Dr. Christine Yaffe, Chief of Geriatric Psychiatry, San Francisco Veterans Administration Medical Center. And so it's not just something that's just out of the blue. This has gone on for years and years. Also, in the higher energy groups, that means people who did what? More activities. In those groups, we saw much less cognitive decline, a protective effect amounting to as much as 40%, according to Yaffe. This is an important intervention that all of us can do, and it could have huge implications in preventing cognitive decline. That's kind of exciting, isn't it? Do you feel like getting out and moving more? Helping reverse the damaging effects maybe of some of the things we've taken into our systems that can cause the brain to just go phew. Why should we decline into the yellow years, as Dr. Hans Diehl says, when you could have the golden years? Our brain should be perfectly active and fully functional, and the greatest blessing to humanity of all our life when we reach the senior years. Our cognitive learning skills should be sharper than ever if we keep them agitated, used, functional. Such important stuff. Now, according to Dr. James Blumenthal, Journal of Aging and Physical Activity, what we found so fascinating was that exercise had its beneficial effect in specific areas of cognitive function that are rooted in the frontal and prefrontal regions of the brain, said Blumenthal. The implications are that exercise might be able to offset some of the mental declines that we often associate with our aging process. Isn't that interesting? Ongoing animal studies at the Salk Institute showed that running can boost brain cell survival in mice that have a neurodegenerative disease with properties similar to Alzheimer's. Running, did you notice the little guy I put on the screen there running? Running, he's going. They noticed that when they had similar like Alzheimer's type symptoms, that when these mice were running and active, the symptoms reversed. How many people do you see sitting in a home for the elderly getting worse and worse and worse? They sit down and their hips start to hurt and they can't get up and walk and they can't think. And then there's the drug medications. A drug to sleep, a drug to wake, a drug before you eat, thickened water so you can drink a little bit. What are we doing to creatures made in the image of God? We are becoming imbeciles. We can't understand the word. We readily take in what's preached from a pulpit and think, well, that must be the truth, instead of being a Berean Christian. Search it out for yourself. So many times we get calls from people. Could you tell me this, or this, or this? I want to say, why don't you search it out? Well, we don't know how to do that. Try it. You'll like it. Search it out and try to find out what the truth is on any given subject. All the information Jeanie and I are presenting, you notice we've given our references? So many times people phone up, where's the reference for that? Go find it. Go dig in. Use your brain. But for those who won't, we've put references on our work. But we'd prefer you did your own research. You know what you'll find? You will find even more information than we've been able to display for you here. We've got lots that we haven't even put on the screen. We can't keep up with the information. Science is all the time proving and verifying and validating the writings of the spirit of prophecy. Validating the writings of the spirit of prophecy. Isn't that amazing? I just made a new word. You know, it's part of the neurogenesis. Okay, well, if you take a look at this now, when these mice are sedentary, it appears that most newly born brain cells die. We don't understand that fully, but it probably has something to do with an inability to cope with oxidative stress. Not enough exercise, not enough oxygen coming in, said Carol Lee Barlow, a Salk assistant professor and lead author of the study. Running appears to rescue many of these cells that would otherwise die. That's rather interesting. Furthermore, the miles logged correlated directly with the numbers of increased cells. She said it's almost as if they were wearing pedometers, and those that ran grew more cells. I'm going to repeat that. Those that ran grew more cells. You don't have to run, but the rats were running, the mice were running. You need to move. You need to do things that cause blood flow to go pulsing through the brain. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. Wow. It's exciting. Now, A Solemn Appeal, 1870. This was written about children who had no memory to speak of, or could not remember things very well. She said this, "Have you not been astonished at their wonderful forgetfulness? The most simple and oft-repeated directions would be soon forgotten. They might be quick to learn, but it would be of no special benefit to them. The mind would not retain it. What they might learn through hard study, when they would use their knowledge, is missing, lost through their sieve-like memory. Have you not noticed their reluctance to engage in active labor, and their unwillingness to perseveringly accomplish that which they have undertaken, which taxes the mental as well as the physical strength? The tendency of many is to live in indolence." The dear prophet walked a mile every morning before breakfast and kept the brain active. And we ought to do the same. Whose glory is at stake here? Humanity's or God's? God never sleeps and he never slumbers. He knows our needs, and one of them specifically is movement. Movement is necessary. You've got one brain but over 600 muscles. Which should you use most? 600 muscles. And you know, it's absolutely fascinating because the more you are physically active, the better your brain skills are. So now, your ears, I should say your brain is not made to keep your ears from rubbing together. Your brain was made to be used. And if you look at all these senses right here, the senses are simply all the organs of communication. They are communicating to the brain. That's what they're for. So, neurobics is a unique system of brain exercises using your 5 physical senses and your emotional sense in unexpected ways that encourage you to shake up your everyday routines. They are designed to help your brain manufacture its own nutrients that strengthen, preserve, and grow brain cells. Did you catch that? Strengthen, preserve, and grow brain cells. Wouldn't you like to have a new brain? The opportunity is yours. You can grow new brain cells. Have a new brain. I'm going to show you what some of these neurobics are. The ears feed the brain. The eyes feed the brain. The touch feeds the brain. The mouth feeds the brain in more ways than one. The nose feeds the brain as well. All these senses are involved. You know, your senses are like 5 rebellious children, and your brain is the adult. And most times the 5 rebellious children get their way. You're walking through the store, you see something you know you shouldn't eat, but what does the tongue say? Oh, we've been good for the past 3 weeks. Why don't we have some of that? And the brain says, now calm down. That will hurt me. And the stomach says, or the touch says, oh, I remember what it felt like when we moved it up to the mouth. You know, and the nose says, oh, I remember the smell of that coming out of the oven. And the brain has to say, that's it. Go to your room, all of you. You rebellious children, just go. And you've got to take them somewhere else. Now, Jesus said, a man's enemies shall be they of his own household. I'm going to apply that to our senses. They are the members of your household, 5 rebellious children. But they can be used to make a better, greater, more perfect brain if you make them obey. And you can. You can. Does it take effort? You know something? You may try and fail. But I want to tell you this. Every single person who has a success, every success, guess what happens before you get success? Failure. Every success is the end result of a failure. So you just think about that. If you failed, take heart. Try again. Try again and try again until you succeed. Created by Lawrence C. Katz, PhD, a professor of neurobiology at Duke University Medical Center, neurobics can be done anywhere, anytime, in offbeat, fun, and easy ways. Nevertheless, these exercises can activate underused nerve pathways and connections. Notice that? Under what? Underused. Nevertheless, these exercises can be used for that, helping you achieve a fit and flexible mind. I'm going to show you one in particular. Try to include one or more of your senses in an everyday task, such as wash your hair or take your shower with your eyes closed. And you'll notice something. Boy, where did I keep that washcloth anyway? Right? Now you may be using your senses to feel the different bottles. Which is the shampoo? Which is the conditioner? You keep your eyes closed. Guess what senses are being activated now? You see, sight is the sense that trumps all other senses. So you want to close down sight to give the other senses a chance to work. And you know, you'll learn by mistake. You'll say, oh, I put the conditioner on. I meant to put the shampoo on, right? So you'll feel the difference. You'll what? Feel the difference. So now your brain takes a new note of this. And so you put it back, you rinse the conditioner off, and you grab the other bottle and memorize it now. Okay, that's right there. Bang, oh, that's not the mouthwash, is it? Oh, okay. No, it should be the shampoo, okay? Right? Should be the shampoo. So before you go in and have your shower with your eyes closed, make sure the right bottles are in there, okay? That's a good thing to do. And this is neurobics. When you go home, you could go to your front door and close your eyes and feel the keys and see if you can figure out which one opens the front door. And then try to plug it in and see if it's the right one. And if it's not, then try to find the other one. Don't open your eyes. Just do it. And then open the door and come in and try to find the closet. And try to find a hanger and then hang your coat up or whatever. And then open your eyes and you've given your brain something new to do. If you want to remember something very well, involve as many senses as you can in the remembering of that particular article. If you're driving down the street, you want to remember a street address. It's 42 Lockwood Drive or something like that. So have in your vehicle with you something you could touch that would give you a different sensation, like a piece of sandpaper, a piece of silk, some kind of material, and rub that while you're looking at 42 Lockwood Avenue. Look at it. And maybe you have something you could smell, cedar oil or something like that, and you smell that while you're looking at the address. Now guess what's going to happen? You've put a whole lot of links through your senses to your sight, to your brain. So now whenever you smell that fragrance, what are you going to think of? The address. Whenever you scratch that, sense it, feel, you're going to remember it. If you plug in both of them, you say, I remember that address. It's 42 Lockwood Drive. Yeah. And so the more senses you get involved in the learning, the better you learn, the better you remember things. And repetition sometimes is fantastic for learning. Now, here's another one for you. Get dressed with your eyes closed. This can be a challenge. Am I wearing something matching? What will it look like once I get it on, right, ladies? Because if you're used to looking, which you are, at your clothes, then now you're going to find something different. What did this sweater feel like? Is this the one I had in mind? Now your brain is going to start working and you will feel the difference. You'll actually feel something take place in your brain. It's exciting to think about, isn't it? Are these things you'd like to go home and practice now? You just think about it, isn't it? You want to get your brain going. That's what Christ died to save, your mind, your brain. That 80% of water that is you. All right, share a meal and use only visual cues to communicate. No talking. And don't do it while you're watching a movie. Just have the two of you there, or the three of you, or the four, or a whole family sitting at the table, and you're not doing anything but using your eyes. And see if you can understand each other. You will feel different aspects of your brain working. You're going to be developing your brain. Now, guess what's going to happen when you practice these things on a regular basis? You're going to notice, that's funny, I remember things better. I'm not as depressed. I'm understanding things in a different way. This is exciting to think about, isn't it? Wouldn't you like to have a better brain? I would. From the writings of the Spirit of Prophecy, it is agreeable, but not most profitable, to exercise those faculties which are naturally the strongest, like your sight, while we neglect those that are weak, but which need to be strengthened. Now that can apply to physical areas. That can apply to studies. Some are gifted like in mathematics. Albert Einstein, when he was young before he ever went to school, his uncle used to come and bring him books about algebra and geometry and things like this. And he'd study these and he'd be really interested in these things. And when Albert Einstein died at age 76, when they examined his brain, they noted that the section of the brain which handles math was much larger than the average person. Why do you think that is, learning what you've learned tonight? It's because that's where he spent his time. Learning those things. He had a natural three-dimensional view of mathematical things. But that's because it developed. God is no respecter of persons. Whatever you focus on, be it music, be it art, be it dance, be it building, be it colors, be it decorating, be it food making, those are the areas of your brain that will be developed more. So we need to be balanced. I hate mathematics, but yet I write music. I write music for a whole orchestra. And yet I hate mathematics. So do you know what I got to do? Mathematics. Because I'm not developing a proper portion of my brain. I'm not developing equal portions, a well-balanced brain. I might not like building or repairing the garage door, but I better learn how to so I can develop a balanced brain. Are you hearing what I'm saying? That's exactly what she's talking about here. Developing the complete brain. The things you don't like to do, start doing some of them so you don't become a monomaniac, a person who's only gifted in one area. You can develop all areas, and guess what's going to happen to your brain when you develop all areas? The areas that are the strongest are going to become even stronger. Your ability to understand math, Rudell, will work better. Do you see? So they all develop as we use them. That's the key. Use it or lose it. That's the term. So, the feeblest faculties should have careful attention that all the powers of the intellect may be nicely balanced and all do their part like well-regulated machinery. Nice to have these quotes, isn't it? Now, is it backing up what we presented to you today? Actually, science is backing up the quotes given to this wonderful woman in the late 1800s. Someone much wiser than her was giving her these things. And you know something? Science is now backing up. God is brilliant. What he gives in the beginning, he doesn't have to change. He knows the end from the beginning. And he wants a brain that is ready to receive impressions from the Spirit, ready to receive instruction from the Word of God, ready to grasp hold of the spirit of prophecy and put it to use. So, Reflecting Christ, page 151. Those who obey the laws of health will give time and thought to the needs of the body and to the laws of digestion. And they will be rewarded by clearness of thought and strength of mind. On the other hand, it is possible for one to spoil his Christian experience by abuse of the stomach. So tell me, would diet have anything to do with salvation? I'm here to tell you it does. What did Jesus do first thing in his ministry, 40 days and 40 nights? To overcome the strength of appetite's hold on mankind. So does appetite have anything to do with salvation? I'm here to tell you it does. But also you can't overcome in your own strength. We need to go to Christ for help. Those things that derange the digestion have a benumbing influence on the finer feelings of the heart. Every habit that injures the health reacts upon the mind. That time is well spent, which is directed to the establishment and preservation of sound physical and mental health. Firm, quiet nerves and a healthy circulation help men to follow right principles and to listen to the promptings of conscience. And also from the same book, the brain is the citadel of the being. Wrong physical habits affect the brain and prevent the attainment of good mental discipline. Unless the youth are versed in the science of how to care for the body as well as for the mind, they will not be successful students. Study is not the principal cause of breakdown of the mental powers. The main cause is improper diet, irregular meals, a lack of physical exercise, and careless inattention in other respects to the laws of health. Not enough ping pong as one of them. When we do all that we can to preserve the health, then we can ask God in faith to bless our efforts. Praise the Lord. I'm thankful to have such writings. It's absolutely thrilling to me. Now, here are 7 rules for a healthy brain. 7 rules. First of all, increase water intake. Your brain is about 80% water, and you need to hydrate your brain with adequate water. Even slight dehydration can raise stress hormones, which, over time, damage the brain. Your brain will pull water from the bowels to service its own needs because the brain needs water more than any other tissue in the body. Look how much function it uses. Look how much of the calories coming in. Look how much it uses. Look how much of the oxygen it uses. So it's going to pull also most of the water to service its functions if there's not enough water to service all the organs. Secondly, restrict processed food intake. Eating less triggers certain mechanisms in the body to increase the production of nerve growth factors, which are helpful to the brain. However, make sure that the foods you do consume have optimal nutrition. Notice the foods that are beside the statement? That's where you want to be. That's where you want to be. That's going to feed the brain. Thirdly, consume good fats. DHA, that is the docosahexaenoic acid, is an omega-3 fatty acid which makes up a large portion of the gray matter of the brain. A good source for this nutrient is the Udo's oil with DHA. The DHA is obtained from seaweeds and not from fish. That is the DHA in Udo's oil. Very nice. Other sources of good fats are avocados, Brazil nuts, cashews, flaxseed oil, green leafy vegetables, olive oil, walnuts, and over here I've got sacha inchi oil. You ever heard of sacha inchi oil? Well, look it up on the web if you don't know what it's all about. Highest omega-3 oil in the world. 54% omega-3, feeding your brain and building the axionic highways necessary for neurogenesis. Now let's look at a fourth rule. Keep a proper balance of carbohydrates, protein, and good fats. If you have a nice vegan diet with lots of raw foods, you're getting all of these without even thinking about it. Kind of nice. Choose 24 brain-healthy foods each week and incorporate them into a menu plan. So do some research. Find out which foods feed the brain. And believe you me, there is nothing from the animal kingdom that needs to be put on your plate to feed the brain, especially fish. That's nonsense. It doesn't even make sense. You can get your nutrients better from flaxseed oil or Sachi Inchi seeds or any of that, better than from the liver of some dead old fish. You know, it's just a shame. When we put that cooked food into our systems, like the animal products, it makes your body like a graveyard where the animal decomposes. No thanks. I don't want one of those. I want a brain that works on healthy blood from living plants. Next, avoid snacking between meals. Cows were meant to graze, not human beings. Cows have a number of stomachs. We have one meal at a time. One meal at a time. Drink freshly made vegetable fruit juice mixes instead. You can have those about halfway between your meal. Well filtered, get your vegetable juice and your fruit juice mix, a 50-50 mix, like for instance, carrot juice and fresh squeezed orange juice. Mix them 50-50. Strain them well, and you can have 16 ounces in between breakfast and lunch. You can have 16 ounces in between lunch and supper time. And this will do your body the world of good and stop your hunger cravings and feed your cells, rebuilding the cellular tissues so they hold water, and that includes the brain tissues. And you learned about how exciting that is. You want to look younger? Feed the cells. Feed the cells. And lastly here, for the 7 rules, increase consumption of dietary antioxidants. Numerous studies have shown that increasing antioxidants from fruit and vegetables significantly reduces the risk of developing cognitive impairment. All berries are excellent sources of antioxidants, as are spinach, broccoli, beets, cherries, oranges, avocado, red grapes, and red peppers. And there's lots of other ones. Do your investigating and see. You know, you can have a whole breakfast of just citrus and nuts. Just citrus and nuts, a good variety. And chew them well and have that for a breakfast, one of your breakfasts. I'm not saying have the same breakfast every morning. You need a variety of foods to feed your brain. And now, from the spirit of prophecy, though at first the memory be defective, it will gain strength by exercise. That's the physical and the mental. So that after a time, you will delight thus to treasure up the words of truth. And the habit will prove a most valuable aid to spiritual growth. Do you think that's what the Lord wants? Well, we've presented to you all the ways to improve your memory, have we not? Now all you have to do is go and do it. May God bless you.